Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. We continue our study today with the book of Joshua, Sefer Yehoshua. We are at chapter 17 today, and we are still discussing the divvying up of the land of Israel among the tribes, among the 9.5 tribes who are going to be settling the land on the west side, on the west bank of the Jordan River. And today we move on to the other half of the tribe of Manasseh. We discussed in detail the inheritance of the tribe of Manasseh on the east bank of the Jordan. Remember, Manasseh was the one tribe that was split in half. And we started discussing the dividing up of the tribe of Joseph, his land, and Ephraim, which turned eventually out to be the key, most dominant tribe of the northern tribes, of the counterweight to Judah. Okay, but Ephraim had a brother, Manasseh, whose tribe was split. So now we're talking about the half of Manasseh, which took their portion on the west bank, along with the majority, most of the other brothers. Vayihi gorol l'matei Menashe, and the lot, that which fell out to the portion of the tribe of Menashe, Kihu Bechor Yosef, because he was the firstborn of Joseph, the older of the two brothers. Menashe was the firstborn over Ephraim. L'machir Bechor Menashe, Machir was the firstborn of Menashe, and it was his descendants who lived on the west bank. Avi HaGilad, he was the father of Gilad, Kihu Ish Milchama, and he was a man of war, a strong warrior. Vayilo HaGilad v'Habashan, and Gilad and Bashan was what he inherited. I'm sorry, he was the one who inherited on the east side. However, Vayhi Livnei Menashe HaNosarim, the remainder of the descendants of Menashe, those that did not come from Gilad and Machir, Hanosarim, the remainder of the Mishpachosam, according to their families, were the following: Livnei Eviezer, Livnei Chelek, Livnei Asriel, Livnei Shechem, Livnei Chefer, Livnei Shmida. These were the names of the other ones. Livnei Menashe ben Yosef HaZacharim Mishpachosam. Those were the male descendants of Menashe, according to their families, that were awaiting their portion on the west bank. However, there was one descendant. One of those families we mentioned was Chefer, and he had a son, Zelaphechad. He had a son named Zelaphechad. And he is famous because of his daughters, which we're about to see in a minute. Because he was Zelaphechad ben Chefer, the son of Chefer, ben Gilad, son of Gilad, ben Machir, ben Menashe, the son of Machir, son of Menashe. Lo hayu lo banim. He did not have any sons, ki im banos. He only had daughters. Now, if you recall, because Zelaphechad was one of the people that lived in the Midbar, in the wilderness, and wandered with Moshe, and he passed on in the wilderness, the daughters of Zelaphechad presented themselves before Moshe. This is going back to the Torah. And they said, if there's no sons, daughters should inherit, because otherwise our father, Zelaphechad, who has a right to a portion in the land, will never get a portion in the land. And Moshe asked God for advice, and God said, yes, definitely he deserves. If there's no son, the daughters should get a portion. So they stood up for that, and that was what they were told already in the Torah. But now it's time to get the portion. So what were the names? Ve'ela Shmos Benosav. These are the names of the daughters. It's interesting that the text doesn't just say daughters, but it names them. The text is giving them a significant amount of importance here. Machla v'Noah, Chagla, Milka v'Tirza. These are their names of the 5 daughters. Vatikravna, and they presented themselves lifnei Elazar HaKohen, before Elazar the high priest, v'lifnei Yehoshua ben Nun, and before Joshua, v'lifnei Anasiim, and before the other leaders, Lamar, saying as follows: Adonai tziva et Moshe, God commanded Moshe, latet lanu nachla, to give us a portion b'toch achenu, among our brothers, vayitein lahem al pi Adonai nachla, and God has given So therefore, he gave them, he meaning Yoshua gave them, based on the instructions of God, nachla, a portion betoch avihan, among their brothers. So they received portion just like their father would have received, just like everyone else received portions. In other words, the brothers. It's interesting that they had to present themselves. In other words, they had to advocate for themselves. And we saw the same thing in the last chapter with Achsa, the daughter of Kalev, the daughter of Caleb, that in order to get the portion that she felt she deserved, she had to present herself. This is unfortunately a precursor to what we know throughout history, that nobody gave women what they deserved because they deserved it. The women had to stand up for themselves and demand it. Even though in this case it's already been commanded by God, and the verse here clearly commends them for doing that, and same just like it did with Achsa, it commends them for taking their lives into their own hands and advocating for what was justifiably theirs. Now, the Chavle Menashe, the portions of Menashe were divided into 10 portions. The commentaries go into explanations as to how the daughters of house was divided into 10 and why the daughters of Zelaphechad received 4 of those portions based on the amount of families. I'm not going to go into the details, but it was Levad Me'eretz HaGilad v'HaBashan. This is aside from the land of Gilad and Bashan, Asher Me'ever Li'ardin, which was on the east side of the Jordan, and where the rest of their tribe lived. Ki benos Menashe, and the reason why it was divided into 10 portions is because the daughters of Menashe, Nachla betoch banav, they also inherited a inheritance among their sons, V'eretz HaGilad ha'itah levnei Menashe min Osarim, and the land of Gilad, which is on the other side, the remainder of Menashe's family took. Vayihi gvul Menashe. So now it's going to give the boundaries, and the boundaries of Menashe may Asher, that go from the land of Asher hamichmitat towards Michmitat, Asher al Pnei Shechem, which is near Shechem, which is usually identified with modern day Nablus. V'halach hagavul el hayamin el yoshvei ein tapuach, and then the boundary continued to the right, presumably that's eastward, towards the place where those that lived near the spring of Tapuach. L'Menashe haisa eretz Tapuach, and Menashe was given the land of Tapuach. It seems to be that there were others that lived in the Ein Tapuach. It doesn't identify who these others were, but the area of Tapuach was given to Menashe. V'Tapuach el gvul Menashe l'bnei Ephraim. But Tapuach itself, in other words, the land around Tapuach was for Menashe. Tapuach, the town itself, went to Ephraim, not Menashe. V'yard hagvul, and then the boundary went down. Nachal Kana to the Wadi Kana. Negba towards the south. L'Nachal Arim to the Wadi Arim. Ha'ela, L'Nachal towards the Wadi, I apologize. Arim Ha'ela l'Ephraim. These towns, the towns that were in that area, belonged to Ephraim, betoch Hari Menashe, which were interspersed also among the towns that were given to Menashe. Ugvul Menashe, and the boundary which delineated Menashe's borders, Mitzvon L'Nachal, was north of the Wadi, Vayihi Totz Osav Ayama, and it went all the way towards the sea. Negba, the south, Ephraim, belonged to Ephraim, Mitzvona, and north of the boundary went to Menashe, Vayihi Ayam Gvulo, and the sea itself was his boundary on the west of Asher Yifkun Mitzafon, and north of Menashe was the land of Asher, Uvi Yisachar Mizrach, and the land given to Yisachar, the tribe of Yisachar, was to the east of that. Vayihi Menashe Yisachar, and within Yisachar's portion was Menashe had some places. Uva Asher, and in Asher's portion, Menashe had some places. And what were these places? Beit Shan Uvnosah, that's the town of Beit Shan, and its outlying towns V'Yivla'am, and the city of Yivla'am Uvnosah, and its outlying towns Vet Yoshvei Dor, and the town of Dor, which is on the coast of Uvnosah, and its outlying towns V'Yoshvei Ein Dor Uvnosah, and those that resided in Ein Dor, the spring of Dor, and its outlying towns V'Yoshvei Tanach Uvnosah, v'yoshvei Megiddo uvenosea sheloshes hanafes. These constituted 3 separate areas, regions, or where they lived. V'lo yachlu v'nei Menashe lehorish et ha'arim ha'eleh. And this is interesting, and I want you to pay attention to this carefully. The people of Menashe were not able to send out, to dispossess, as is often used in translations. It's a good word. The residents, in other words, the Canaanite residents of these cities. Now, not able could mean several ways. Chazal, and we saw before, understood the terms "not able" to mean they're not able because of some reason, because they had promised, right? Made something, because that's why we said before they could not get rid of the Jebusites from Jerusalem, because they had made a promise to their forefather Avimelech. But another interpretation, which is more common, is they were not able because the Canaanites were more powerful, so they couldn't wage war against them. I have been suggesting this entire time, and I think with a lot of support, that what this means is they were not able because the people of Canaan didn't want to leave, and they said they didn't want to fight. And remember, the command from God was to offer peace terms first, and we've seen several times that was the case. So Vayoel, and we continue in this verse, it says, Vayoel HaKanani lo shevet ba'aretz hazos. The Canaanites desired to remain in this land. They didn't want to leave. Vayehi, so it was ki chozku b'nei Yisrael, when they were strong. See, this seems to prove that it's about the verse, when they were strong, in other words, and they could have militarily removed them, right? But they still did not do so. What did they do? Vayetnu et haKanani lomas. They made the Canaanites pay tribute. V'horesh lohorishu, but they did not dispossess them. They did not get rid of them. This, in my humble opinion, is a clear indication that the chazku b'nei Yisrael, they could have thrown them out, but they did not, because they were listening to the instructions of the Torah. And this is according to Ramban and the Rambam's interpretation, which is, if they agree to stay and they want to stay and they ask for peace, then you have them pay tribute. Now, paying tribute is the ancient equivalent of paying taxes, which when one nation would conquer another, and one nation would be the overlord over the other, then the nation would pay a tribute to the conquering nation in order to remain in the land, and that was the standard practice, and that's what they did. Now we have an interesting another episode in this that's also placed in this chapter. Remember, we just divided up the lands of the sons of Joseph. So Vayidabru v'nei Yosef et Yoshua lemar. The descendants of Yosef spoke unto Joshua as follows. Now that they divided up this land, they had 2 problems. Number one, there was large parts of their land were controlled by hostile enemies, not the ones who we just talked about that were placed on, to pay tribute, because we mentioned that they wanted to stay, they agreed to pay tribute, even though the people of Israel were strong enough to dispossess them. But they didn't, because that's what happened. But there were those that were enemies, and also a large part of it was forested and undeveloped land. It's nice to take over a city where people already have developed it, they already have cleared the fields for farming, they already have the homes built, but forested, undeveloped land is not easy. It takes a lot of work. It takes many, many years, actually, to clear and get ready and inhabit. So, the people of Joseph said to Joshua as follows, Madua nasata li nachla, why did you give me for a portion, goralecha v'chevel. You give me one place and one strip of land. Bani Amrav, I'm a big nation. In other words, the settled portions of the land are just a small area. I have a lot of people. Ad asher ad ko berchani Adonai, because I can't. As you see, that so much God has blessed us with so many people. We have so many people, so many descendants. There's big families, and all we have is a small area. Vayomer aleim Yehoshua. So Yoshua answered them as follows: Im amrav ata. If you're such a large nation, so there's a lot of you, so you're powerful, you're strong. So alei lecha hayara, go to the area that's forested, right? Uveiresa lecha sham, and clear the land. Be'eretz haPerizi, in the land of the Perizzites, v'harephaim and the Rephaim, ki otzlocha Ephraim, because if you sit around in the area near the mountain of Ephraim, remember Menashe and Ephraim were close to each other, is too tight for you, otzlocha, it's too squeezing you in, you don't have enough room, so go and, clear out some of the forest and build yourself some houses and farms and settle the area. So get to work. It's interesting how Yoshua flips what they presented as a weakness into a strength. They presented as a weakness, there's so much of us, we need more. So he said, well, if there's so much of you, then you got a lot more muscle power. And go clear the fields. Vayomer b'nei Yosef, and then the descendants of Joseph said, Lo yimatzei lanu ha'ar. We can't, that just, even if we cleared the fields, we're still not enough. We still need more. And then they give the other kvetch, the other complaint. This is like the leaders listening to people complaining. And Yoshua is telling them, stop complaining. Get rocking. Get moving. But they continue to complain. V'rechav barzal and the b'cholak nani yoshev baretz ha'emek. Now all the Canaanites that are living there, they have this, iron chariots and they're strong, right? Right? Those that are in both the ones that live in Beit Shan and its cities, and those that live in the Jezreel Valley, they're strong. It takes a lot of work. We don't want to fight them. So then Yoshua said back to them, and it's ironic, after all of these battles that they're winning and conquering and so on, now they're complaining that they have to face a battle. Vayomer Yoshua Beit Yosef. So Yoshua said to the people of Joseph, LeEphraim v'leMenashe, to those that were members of Ephraim and Menashe, because apparently, because remember they were mixed, and the clans were very close together, even some portions within the other portions, like we just read. So he said, Am Ravata, you have a lot of you, there's a lot of you. V'koach gadolach, you are strong. Lo yeh lecha gorel echad. You're not just going to have this one portion, right? Ki har yeh lecha. Right, you have the mountain Kiyaru, which is a forest of Vereso, and you're going to clear the forest. And you will have it and its outskirts. In other words, you will clear the entire mountainous area. Kitorishet taknani, and then you will be able to, and you will also be able to dispossess the Canaanites. Kirechav barzalo, right? Even though they have iron chariots, kichazaku, even though they are strong, because there's a lot of you. In other words, don't worry so much. There's a lot of you. You can clear the land. You can conquer the area. The interesting approach here of Yoshua is basically to say, you can use what you claim to be your weakness as a strength. Stop complaining and go do like we've been, like you're supposed to. Clear the land, no one said it's all going to be easy. Some things you got to work. And the fact that there's enemies, so there's enemies. There's been enemies the whole time. We've dealt with them until now, and you'll continue to deal with them from here on in. We see here possibly some of the beginnings, the rumblings of the difficulties between Menashe and Ephraim, which are the leaders of which is the main tribe of the northern tribes, and Yehuda, the southern tribes, and Binyamin are to the south. This is the first incident. There's no violence here or anything, but there's just complaining between the representatives of Ephraim and the representatives of Yehuda, and this is a theme which is going to course through the entire history of the First Temple period, and the time preceding it. It's laying the foundations for this, what will eventually become a split. Thank you so much for studying chapter 17. Looking forward to studying chapter 18 and, of course, the rest of this wonderful book of Joshua together.